Everybody, welcome to Dave and Joe Liberty Stand. We've got a show about millennials today. It's not all terrible, so don't freak out.
Well, and
But Joe's
yeah.
Joe's going to start us off with. He had some thoughts on
Well,
this.
as we were talking about though, it wasn't like about quote unquote all millennials. Because we interviewed those kids I interviewed there
really
at
good,
Mosey,
good people. Yeah,
and but one of the things I think it's culturally, we kind of talked a little bit about the culture, which may be another segment, but one of the things that came up was like irresponsibility. That in a particular instance I was involved with, speaking with a younger person under 20, it was like they didn't care about well, it goes back to consequences. That's what I kind of, that was the root of it. It was
when he
okay,
says under 20, he means somebody that is though legally an adult. So
oh yeah,
right.
it's
So
yeah,
it wasn't a 15-year-old or something like that.
right. Well, it just gave you kind of an idea of age, but it was like I think it ultimately through our board meeting discussion. And by the way, we do have a studio audience today.
Yes,
a
we
friend
do.
of ours.
Hi. And it's not Bob this time. But
We won't name names. Incrimination. He'll probably incriminate us later. So, but no. The consequences. I think because it started out like I felt like that person was being irresponsible because they had obligations that they were like, I don't care what happens. I'm gonna just whatever happens. But I don't think they realized
knowingly that something would eventually if they didn't do something about it.
Right. But it's almost like even knowing that there were consequences is not realizing the extent of those consequences, maybe. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, what's it really going to cost me? Because I think, like today, it almost seems like the government, or I don't want to say the government per se, but the way the systems are that we have, it's like someone's going to bail me out. You know what I'm saying? We had that with
that has everything to do with
the
the
banks.
government.
Well, it has a lot to do, but I'm just saying, we can't blame. We have to take responsibility for our own actions. I can't blame the government for everything. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this person I'm talking to,
we're set up as a culture as a society to
kind of bail out.
You know what? Hey, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Somebody help me.
And it's the bailout. I mean, I think about when the housing market, when the crash, and it's like the banks need bailed out, or Chrysler needed bailed out, or whatever that was. Was it Chrysler or
it was,
Chevy, GM?
Government Motors, right? Yeah,
right. Government Motors. That's good. Well, no, and that's the mentality, I think, and that's where it kind of all came to full circle. But the other part of it I wanted to mention was the fact that we do not take serious sin. And the other part, bad part about that is we don't even know what's right and wrong. We don't even know there is no such thing as sin. I almost feel like sometimes today, when you look at things that are going on around us, it's like there's no such thing as wrong. And I'm wrong is when I stand up for things that are right.
Let me ask you why you believe that is. Well, I know that you're right, so I won't say believe that is. Why do you think that is? That's the case.
That there's no such thing as right or wrong.
Yes.
I think it goes back to kind of the other discussion. The cultural thing is the fact that we've taken God out of our lives. We've taken the only one who tells us, who has the right to say what's right and wrong. We've ignored. I mean, is that part of what you're looking at?
So you're saying the younger people that are the millennials that are from, I don't know where they're at now in their teens to where that cuts off to where they're at in their 30s.
Right, age-wise.
Middle to early 30s it cuts off, maybe 35 to whatever teen years now, somewhere in that fluctuation. The educational system has tried to get rid of all that. It's all been on purpose. It's because of the federalization of our education system, and they're getting rid of all that. They don't teach history. God's not allowed at all.
Right.
And the fact, so I blame government, and I also blame, and I say this every time I bring this up because I got to say I am not someone who attends church. I do not, but I do know about churches and stuff, and I would say a huge percentage of them, a huge majority of them
of churches
cave to the political correctness and think that, well, I'm going to turn people off if I do this or that. So they water everything down, so you don't get the message you're supposed to get, and people aren't really that interested anymore anyway. And when they go, they're not hearing anything earth shattering or something to go
that could be. I mean, Well, and then ultimately, I mean, I would say with that is I'm responsible for my household. So I can't like I've done this. I'm guilty of this. I've pushed. Okay, the education system is supposed to educate my kids. I don't have to do that. So I can hands off. The church is supposed to
I disagree.
spiritual. No, I'm just saying in an analogy. So the spiritual part of my children's lives, they're going to go to church. So the church can take care of them there, and that way I could sit back and might be fat and sassy and be entertained and do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I think, ultimately that's the American cult. That's where we've kind of come.
Nobody sits down,
you know what I'm saying,
as a family at a table at the end of the day and says, "So what did you learn in school today?"
Right. Everybody's too busy.
If it's something that that's not being prioritized.
Right. Well,
that should be.
Yeah. You're right.
And if you as a family go to church, whenever you go to church, when you have dinner that night. So what did you like or not like about church today? What did you learn? Was there anything you didn't know?
And then also engaging.
It's being involved in the education of
your family,
your ours
kids.
and your religious aspect. I mean, it's being involved in that.
Right.
Stuff. They're not getting it at school. They're not getting it at church, and most aren't getting it at home.
Well,
I mean, that's
What do
you expect from this group when that's the way they've been brought up?
And we've also been trained as, I think, parents to culturally. Well, because the way the culture is, we're so busy. We have to work because we want the house with the picket fence and the 2 cars and blah blah blah. And so what are we doing? We have to go out there and work.
Then you go.
So mom and dad are working.
Then that means you go to the grocery store and you make dinner instead of you.
I know.
Buy out every night. How expensive is it to get takeout every night? Or
exactly.
To have all the
all the fast food. Look at the fast food.
There's prioritized. It's all about priority.
It is. It is. Well, I just want.
So I do agree that the millennials are very socially liberal, but there's a reason for it. And there's a reason why they want free stuff, because they were told and taught they deserve it. And that's what the government's for.
Well, because maybe they one thing is, okay, mom and dad were too busy working. I have another situation where that's kind of like the young person does not want to work. They want freedom to be able to do things. They don't want to be tied down to a job. Because maybe they saw mom and dad were always having to work and they didn't have time with the family. Or I'm just saying it was just kind of a result of, where we're at, as a culture. I'm saying where you wanted. I mean, because if you look at, I've heard have this kind of discussion, is the Great Depression. Sure. So my parents were growing up through the Great Depression, so they didn't have
your parents weren't growing up.
So my grandparents
were, yeah.
So then, but my parents were affected because my grandparents wanted to give my parents everything they could,
right?
And then my parents, they wanted to give their kids everything they.
See, it's a catch-22.
Yeah,
because if you didn't have it rough, you don't know. You're not tough, and you don't know how to do it. But
it became soft,
and you don't want it to be like that for your kids. But by doing that, you're wrecking your kids, and they think like, the stupidest thing is such a hardship. It's like you don't even know what that means.
Right, we don't know. I mean, we've always had food on the table and
I know.
the roof over our head, In my family, I mean,
in my family, but when I went out on my own, I had 2 roommates, and it used to drive me crazy because I would just buy ramen noodles and be fine with that if that's what I had to eat.
Right.
Because I wanted to be on my own and make it on my own. And I'd say, well, hey, tonight, let's... Well, we're going home to eat. And I'm like, home? When that was insulting to me. We bought this. We didn't buy this place. We all went in
Rented.
together to rent this place
Right.
and make that our home.
Right.
But they still referred to mom and dad
as home because they had to go home to
and
eat.
you go home to eat for free. It's like, oh, but, I mean, kids today, they don't even think about it like that. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say this. I thank God for his presence when he came into my life, because I was raised and grew up in the church and everything, and so I was taught about the Lord, but I didn't give my life to the Lord until I was 30. Yeah, we got to wrap up. So,
well, some of the stuff we touched
yeah.
in on this is we're gonna. It's
Intertwined.
going to be new with other subjects. We're going to be broaching them
We
later.
are really reaching.
And anyway, millennials are. A lot of it's a generational thing. A lot of
Yeah,
it is
I don't
just,
want to rail on them because it's bigger than
there's
them.
a lot of great.
It deals with
people.
me as a parent.
But there's also
Oh.
a good reason why they don't know any better than the
right,
majority
we
of
need to
it.
be. As
We gotta
parents
take.
need to
We
take
gotta
responsibility.
take some blame. Right. We gotta take
Okay.
some of the blame.
Speaking
on
of
it, so
responsibility,
we gotta go.
All right.
We'll see you later.
God bless you.
Guys.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.